Hello, I'm TheCosmerian, and this is the Tiny Talk podcast. Here I am joined by three wonderful guests. If you can introduce yourself, starting with Laglaunt.
Hello, my name is Laglaunt, aka Joe Cantrell, for people who know me in real life. I am one of the committee consultants and local play organizers for the Tiny Leaders format.
I guess I'll go next. I'm usually known online as Nushio, but people in real life call me Juan. I'm from Mexico. I play Tiny Leaders at tournaments at home.
Awesome. And Omniscience.
Hi there, I'm Omniscience, or as people know me, Raymond Nearing. I'm a local game store owner here in Cranbrook, British Columbia. And we've been playing all sorts of paper magic at my store for the last 6 years, and in our community, much longer than that at other LGSs that have kind of closed down and opened up over the years.
And yeah, I am, as always, TheCosmerian. A little something new about me that you might not know, even if you've watched the episodes, is that I do actually play some paper Tiny Leaders. Now, it is mostly online, but I do have a local group of me and two of my friends that play in a weird kind of three-person Tiny Leaders games, fairly casual every now and again. So, with that said, let's start with the questions. So, our first question is, how did you get into TLR, and what led you to start your own community? And we'll start off with Laglaunt.
Yeah, so how I got into Tiny Leaders is just by chance. I was scrolling through Moxfield, and I think I randomly saw a deck with the tag, and I remembered the format from way back in the day. So I tend to have a habit to hyperfixate to things. So I started doing all the research I possibly could on the format. And then I realized that it had been reborn and it had a fledgling community that was playing it quite often. So I was pretty interested in starting that for my own play group. How we started our own community, well, I'm kind of known as the guy in the area that rallies people to go play Magic, whether for, I guess, 13 years it was getting people to show up to Monday Night Legacy. And then we used to hold dual commander tournaments. We did that for about 4 years in a row. We would do leagues with round robin where you'd play everybody, cash prize and stuff like that. So hosting events is not really something that's new. I also have pretty good rapport with a lot of the local game stores, so I would just approach the store owners or the managers or whoever I knew from the store, and I just tried to get it off the ground. And Ukiah, where I live, the owner Casey at Sword Board, he was the first person who was really receptive to that, and he said, "Yeah, let's try it out." So we tried it for a F&M, and I think we ended up getting like 14, 15 people for that F&M, and then just ever since then we have been trying to push our Reborn Rumble circuit to go between multiple stores and just try to grow the format.
That's awesome. And Nushio.
On my side, so I actually started back when Tiny Leaders was just Tiny Leaders. A friend of mine, we used to play all sorts of Magic the Gathering weird formats. By weird, I do mean like Arch Nemesis and Plane Chase and all the other formats that Magic has tried to push onto the players. They came out with Commander. We bought a few decks. And then one of the players started like really intensely suggesting that we do this weird format called Tiny Leaders. So we tried doing the 50 card thing. I have a Marat deck. Well, I had a Marat deck back then. I eventually stopped playing Magic the Gathering altogether. And then a few years ago, when the Doctor Who set came out, They know I'm a Doctor Who fan, and a few friends gifted me one of the Doctor Who Commander decks, and invited me over to start playing. And they were playing Tiny Leaders Reborn. So I had to cut the deck into 50, and I tried so very much hard to make it work. I eventually started going into the paper tournaments that people around the city have started, and I did not create a community. I'm just part of it.
Yeah, and you are a fairly, from what I understand, a fairly active part of the community and are definitely like one of our liaisons between uh,
Yes.
tiny leaders
Thank you.
here and the community over there.
Yeah, I'm just very active on Discord and generally just online.
Ito and Omniscience.
Tiny leader for us here in Cranbrook started, I want to say 11, 12, 13 years ago, a long time. It was just after Commander had come out, and we were very hesitant to make the Commander change because we were all pretty into standard and modern at the time. And so when somebody has suggested we get into Commander, I'm like, this format is just so awful. Like, just amounts of board wipes and really powerful cards. And I'm like, it'd be nicer if there was something a little bit less intense, because some of those games lasted forever. So I can't remember which one of our friends ended up finding the Tiny Leader rules, like the original ones. And I'm like, okay, let's give that a try. That sounds like a lot of fun. Because I've always been a big advocate for all of the little side products. I've had my Vanguard cards for forever. Plane Chase, Arc Enemy. We even created a few of our own little weird little formats. So we ended up really loving Tiny Leaders. And we probably played that just straight at the local game store for just months. And then when the local game store closed down, I decided I was going to open up my own game store because I've always wanted to do that. And so the very first thing that we started having was Tiny Leader Nights. And everyone was really excited about it. And then we just kind of decided, hey, let's have like a once a year tournament with Tiny Leader rules to celebrate like the store's anniversary. And so we just kind of launched it. Now we're here 6 years later. Our last Tiny Leader tournament, we had 46 people show up to the tournament, and it was a big success. So we're really excited for next year. And a lot of my community, they're like pushing, we want to do a league sometime in the year. Please have a league. So we're looking into that. But a lot of planning for sure goes into it. And my full-time job definitely interferes with a lot of my store time. So it's been a little bit slower than I'd like, but we're getting there.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I don't really have a paper community. I'm just here to be the host. But I can answer the first part of the question, which is I got into TLR via Fish. So Fish MTG made a video called Defense of Tiny Leaders. I actually saw it like a good 2 or so years after it came out. It just randomly popped up on my recommended. And I saw it, I thought, this is a really, really fun idea. And I jumped on the Discord. And so I haven't really created any paper communities, but I am personally kind of interested in potentially fostering a bit of a paper community at my local game store, which I don't really go to very often, like at all, but maybe if there was more Tiny Leaders players, I would go more often. So, with that said, let's go into thoughts on each other's thoughts. Like, what do you guys think of the other people's stories? Any questions you have?
Well, yeah. We have a store that started doing tournaments, Tiny Leader tournaments. What would you suggest we do to improve the player? Get more players. We at our store, I've tried just inspired slash jealous of some of the commander themes that there's out there. When Final Fantasy came out, there was a a wizard sponsored commander theme around Final Fantasy that had heroes and stuff. I have a 3D printer, and I decided to make a Tiny Leaders Reborn Final Fantasy theme tournament where everyone had to bring their own Final Fantasy commanders if they could and wanted. It wasn't mandatory, but it was like highly recommended, and so everyone actually did. And I gave out tiny little chocobos, 3D printed chocobos and moogles for participants, and I had them do random quests like having controlling 4 creatures at once, and I don't remember the other quest that I put on a play card that they had to like take care of throughout the tournament. Um, and we had probably about 16 players that day, but not as many as 40. That sounds super exciting, to be honest.
To answer your first bit of your question, where you're asking what you can do to grow your community, a big one that I do is I have multiple decks. I probably have like 10 decks in my bag, and so when I go to a store, if either I'm talking to people I know or people that are watching and interested in asking questions while we're playing, I offer to let them play and use one of my decks. So that gets the deck in their hand, it gets them playing, and then they get to feel what the format's like. It doesn't cost them anything but time. So that's a really good way to do it. We had actually planned to, me and a Flipmeister had planned to go to some of the surrounding cities and go to some of their local game stores and pick Commander Night and go sit down at one of the tables and just offer to play games against people, because it's close to Commander because it is singleton, but it is close to Legacy because it is competitive. So it's better for them to get a feel of the format that way. Than we've had a few people who showed up, they built a deck, and it wasn't quite up to the same caliber as a lot of the other decks, so they probably had a pretty poor experience. So I feel like that's a much easier way to get people to come play in the format, is to get it in their hands and get them to try it out first.
Yeah, totally. I definitely think that creating a sort of, it doesn't really have to be a battle box, but just like, yeah, as you said, like a group of a bunch of decks where you can say, okay, well, I have a deck with me. And in fact, I have like multiple different types of decks for multiple different types of players. So if you want to play, here's a deck. I think that's something that I definitely want to do if I were to try to promote a paper scene. The first thing I would do is like, yeah, proxy out like a solid 10 or so decks and just show up, come with a friend to play some, and then also like put up a little sign saying, hey, I'm playing Tiny Leaders Reborn. I have decks. You want to play? I have no idea how particularly effective that is, but um I don't know. From what I hear, it's at least decent at gathering a few people.
Yeah. At home, we our play group definitely has several decks, and the person that started that got us into Tiny Leaders, which I believe will be part of a podcast episode in a future episode, probably. He has about 20 Tiny Leaders decks, and he when he's at the store, he definitely lets people borrow them and play them, um, to promote the event and the format.
Yeah, for sure. Um Actually, I do have some like details that I'm just now realizing might be good to like point out, is just like some brief idea of like what your scene is like. I know that Laglaunt, for example, what you've been going for like 2 or so years now, um, and
Yes.
yeah, um, and you've been like kind of the leading forefront in like competitive paper tiny leaders, where you're following the apparently fairly long tradition of having duels as prizes for winners of Tiny Leaders tournaments. Um, and having an OG dual land on the line uh, is pretty lucrative. Actually, I don't know if they're OGs, they're probably like betas, but an actual factual dual land.
Yeah, for sure.
But like, I know the most about Laglaunt's scene, but obviously not from Laglaunt himself, um, in his own words. So like, what's your scene like?
The Bay Area in California is an area that has a bit of money. So uh, lots of people already have dual lands. I think we already had a thriving legacy community back in 2012 to 2016. That's when I think legacy was probably like seeing the most play. So a lot of these people are like tournament grinders. They would go to Grand Prix back when those were a thing, or like PTQs, or they were just willing to play. They were willing to play high stakes Magic, and they have a lot of the cardboard already. So our community is just like those players. We're all probably like, a lot of us are in our late 20s, early 30s, and we've just been playing competitively for so long they just want to win things like more expensive cardboard, so they're willing to drive like hours to go play, to pay a little bit of a higher entry to have a higher stakes tournament. So I guess I would say that our community is a lot of grinders, to answer your question.
Gotcha. And conversely, from what I hear, Nushio, your crew is a bit more casual in how they play the events, and like from what you said about the Final Fantasy themed event, it's a lot more lower to the ground, lower stakes. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I actually have several play groups. A group of friends, we hang out almost once a month, maybe twice a month. We do almost strictly multiplayer games. And I'm talking about 8 people player games, 6 people player games, mostly 4 to 8 player games. We rarely do one-on-ones, or like if 2 people got dropped out of the game really early, they might start a one-on-one, or most likely a 3-player game. That's actually my preferred, or not necessarily my preferred, but the most common way I experience Tiny Leaders Reborn is in a multiplayer format, which I believe is not the intent of Tiny Leaders. It's meant to be a one-on-one format, but it works perfectly as a commander replacement. I can tell you that much.
Yeah, I mean, whatever works. Yeah.
Yeah. On tournaments, we do have a rotating cast of people. There's about 16 of us, I believe, maybe 20 that hang out at this particular store. And we try to do the tournament once a month. Those tournaments are, well, more strict. I am the one that tries to push the boundaries and to attract more people with like the Final Fantasy theme. I'm actually trying to make something for the Christmas tournament, which will be on December 28th. It got pushed to after Christmas, so it's no longer a Christmas themed tournament. But I haven't finalized any details for that one. I am going to give out 3D printed doodads, so that's if this episode comes out before that might be breaking news for the team.
Neat. Yeah, so Omniscience. I frankly know next to nothing about your group. From what I hear, yeah, your group's been going on for like a good 10 years. Um, Starting with the original Tiny Leaders and now evolving into TLR. What's like that like?
I think for us here in our small little city, we're kind of away from everything without a significant drive here in the Rockies. Cranbrook is kind of like one of those places you can go to, but not a lot of people do. So it's out of the way of everywhere. People drive through it to get to Calgary or Vancouver, Victoria, but you don't stay here for very long. But our community, they do like enjoy playing for sure, especially tiny leaders. I know a lot of my patrons to the store wish we did it a little more often, and just getting new people hooked onto it, like Laglaunt was saying, just having 10, 20, 30 decks built and just like, hey, do you want to try this deck? And I definitely have a lot of people that come to the store. They'll bring extra commander decks, extra tiny leader decks to let people play them and try them and get them hooked, which is really nice. And then much like Nushio, where he's saying most of his games played, they're usually 4 players or more. That's pretty common at my store. One-on-one, we reserve for tournaments for sure, but casual play throughout the week or month is generally 5 players up to like 16 player games. It's odd for sure, but a lot of my players, they just like to combine everything. So like, Ray, can we borrow your plane chase cards and your arc enemy cards, your vanguard cards? So they'll often get like a 16 player game with literally every change of format rule possible and just combine them all together and play like a 6-hour game. I'm just like, oh my God, you guys are crazy. But it's
I have to be there one day. That sounds amazing.
Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah, it's an interesting community, but I love them to death. I wouldn't be where I'm at without them. And yeah, it's just slowly growing it every year. I see anywhere from a 10 to 30% increase in people coming to the store and trying out new formats or coming to the anniversary event next year. I think we may have to even rent the Eagles Hall or somewhere, because if we get as many people as I think are going to come, our store can only seat about 50 people comfortably after that. So we might be looking at some extra space for next year.
Yeah, that's honestly, so we like encountered you on a whim. I don't know. I think I don't know. I think it was somebody else that was part of your crew that joined on the server and basically said, "Hey, I just came from a like 46 player event." Uh we had a lot of
His
fun. Is
name
there a way to talk about the deck list?
his name was Ben, by the way.
Yeah, Ben. Um and so we like had no idea that you existed, but now I believe, if I'm not mistaken, you are like, that is the highest organized turnout for a Tiny Leaders Reborn event that we currently have like marked down. So it's really interesting to now know that that's something that exists.
Oh yeah, for sure. Last year I want to say it was 40 people for last year, and then the one we just had was 46. And we had like last minute bails out. Like there was supposed to be 10 more people that were supposed to come, but couldn't due to real life or work. So next year I'm hoping for big numbers. It should be good.
That's amazing. Yeah. Um do you guys have any further thoughts about what's been being talked about, or do we want to move on?
If I'm able to, I might have to make a trek up to Canada this year. I was talking about that with a couple other players, so maybe that'll happen. Maybe we'll need to rent out that space.
Yeah, we should. We're talking in the committee about potentially fundraising for the committee to potentially have money to, fly people out to, for example, Northern California, or, it would be pretty fun if we somehow had the funds for a big old road trip or something like that up to that annual event. Although, then you're talking about going across country lines, and that might be a bit complex. But it would be fun.
Well, you're definitely welcome to come up for sure. It's we're not too far away from the Spokane, like Washington border. I think it's roughly an hour past that to get to Cranbrook.
Oh, then that's very doable. We might actually do that then.
All right. So, potentially this question has already been answered. But how did you guys go about starting up the paper community? And we'll start with Laglaunt.
Word of mouth. Knowing a lot of people in the Magic community helps, and then having that good rapport with the store owners also helps. So anyone looking to also do the same, you have to go to your local game store and then just get to know the people that work there and the people that play. And I mean, once you get to know a lot of the players, you'll know who is more competitively minded and would be looking to play something like that. And you'll know who, they just want to play a Commander, which is kind of more like I think of Commander more like a board game. It's just kind of like a casual, it's just for casual multiplayer experience. So yeah, but you go to Modern Night, go to Legacy Night if you're lucky to have one of those. Any of those sort of constructed days. Usually those players will be more likely to come try your format. And then yeah, like I said, just bring decks.
Yeah, and from what I've heard, that there's a world in which you could get away with doing a similar thing and getting a more casual community. But let's go to Nushio. I know that you said that you did not actually start up the paper community for Tiny Leaders Reborn, but how either did others go about it, or how do you keep going about it now?
Casual play is my answer. I did not start this community, like I mentioned. However, I was pushed onto it, if I may say it that way, via friends. You play what your friends play, or at least that's what I do. If none of my friends are playing standard, I am not gonna play standard. And if my friends are playing tiny, I'm just gonna build a tiny deck. Over the weekend, I went to a friend's party, and I hadn't seen him or that group in years, probably like 2 or 3 years. They were all playing Commander, so I had to build my first Commander deck because I had actually played Commander. And while playing, I just kept on talking about tiny, 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 and someone said, "Hey, let's try tiny next time." So I guess that's how you start a paper community. You go hang out with Commander players and tell them that the grass is greener on the other side.
Yeah, I've actually that reminds me of, I have a friend that I play Commander with every now and again. And he gets so sick of me always mentioning Tiny. Like every time I go over and play, I'm just like, "Oh, well, this is pretty similar to how Tiny works," or, "Oh, this is a pretty good Tiny Commander," or, we wouldn't be experiencing this sort of thing in Tiny Leaders. And he gets
Yeah, I had what I did was I turned my Titus deck from Final Fantasy into a Commander deck, and I just left all the 3 and under staples on it, and just filled it in with a couple of the cards that did come with the pre-con. But it was mostly, I would say, like 80% 3 mana and under. And they were all laughing, like, hey, you have a bunch of little fleas, but they had a lot of counters on them. And I was like the biggest threat on the board, despite trying to stick to a 3 and under theme on my deck.
That's awesome. Okay, well, Omniscience, how do you go about starting up the tiny community?
Just kind of talking about it a lot, getting people amped up for it, just get them excited, lend them your decks, come up like I spend a lot of time with some of the patrons of my store, just helping them brew deck ideas. I'm like, oh, you ever thought about this card and this card? And just kind of like, really subliminally kind of work it into their minds, much like you, Cosmerian, where it's like, oh, we wouldn't have this in a tiny leader, oh, that combo totally would be like avoidable, too high mana costs. We do a lot of that there. There's a lot of good joshing each other for when there's those draggy long commander games. Like, we'd be done already with tiny leader. Why aren't we playing that? But other than that, just keeping positive about it. Not necessarily, you don't got to bribe them with prizes, but prizes definitely help, something to work towards for the league, especially like getting together a bunch of people that want to try and work towards an end goal, whether it be some like prizes at the end or some sort of upgrade to how everything works, whatever you're going to use, like kind of pull the community in together and say, this is what we want to accomplish. What do you guys think? The way I find it a lot easier for me at the store is you find those patrons that are kind of the people that everyone kind of look up to or ask for questions. Kind of, if you can get them on board to your ideas to help you push your ideas, it's really easy for you then, right? Because everyone already looks up to them, or everyone always follows suit. If they're doing something, then everyone else wants to do what they're doing. So just find those people, the people that are really charismatic or that people kind of flock to, and kind of get them on your side.
Interesting. So what I'm hearing is that bribery, peer pressure, and brainwashing are like the three key ways of
Excellent, yes.
getting people on board.
For sure. I think that works in every system.
Magic players are, I always say the phrase herding cats. So like when you have to get these people to do the same thing. They all have different schedules, they have different likes, stuff like that. But Magic players are like cats. They just don't care sometimes. So you have to be really, really persistent. And usually, like I'll give you an example for Reborn Rumble. I sent them all the ad, that like the banner that I made a month before the event. And then 2 weeks later, I DM'd a lot of those people and asked if they were going to remind them, because people make plans and they forget. And then I just messaged everybody today again going, hey, are you going to be there Saturday? Because if I don't do that, then they're going to make plans. So you just have to keep it in their minds, basically.
That's really funny. Yeah, I think just we can add nagging to the list for sure.
Magic players are also, I believe, well, in general, people go for the lowest friction. So whatever's easiest. When I started playing Magic, I was in Standard. I played Standard quite a bit. Once the cards started rotating out, it means that you have to either, change your deck or look into different formats. I believe Commander right now is one of the lowest friction points of entry into Magic. But the biggest friction for Commander, I believe, is 100 cards. It's just way too many. In my case, since I mainly only play tiny leaders, I only know about cards that are like 3 mana and under. So if there's like a 4 mana card, I probably don't know what it does. I might know it exists, but that's about as far as I go. And if it's a 3 and under, I probably know what it does if it's in one of the colors that I normally play. So it's easier if you only have to memorize or learn about a subsection of the cards rather than like the entire universe of Magic the Gathering cards, right?
Yeah, and the great news is, for anybody listening in, our first video ever posted on the Tiny Leaders Committee YouTube channel is the video titled Why Play Tiny Leaders Reborn, in which I basically go and give like a whole big list of reasons why you should play it. And it is framed both towards legacy players and towards commander players. And so, if you have some folks that might be on the fence, you can just send them that video as like, we can we're adding another thing to the list, propaganda. Just like pro tiny leaders propaganda, just start throwing it at them.
You have to have them pay 2 mana for them to attack.
Exactly. So the third question is a bit of a interesting one. So one of the biggest like turnoffs that I have received regarding playing in paper for this format is that it is an eternal format with a legacy style deck construction. And so decks are going to be really expensive if you're playing at the highest competitive level. So I'm interested to know, what is each of your strategies to potentially combat that potential turnoff? We were previously talking about like, reducing the friction. And so this is a major point of friction. How do you guys stop that? And I'll go to Laglaunt.
Having a much more established, older, eternal community, a lot of us have dual lands, as I had said before. So generally, we are just very, very welcoming to new players, and we just tell them if you need to borrow duels that, we got you covered. Initially, we wanted to do proxy, but some of the local game stores were saying there were some issues with Wizards of the Coast when it comes to that sort of stuff, or being like a WPN certified store. I don't know. So we ended up doing no proxy, but I don't know. Me and quite a few others, we usually bring duels for the other players every event, so that kind of makes up for it. So yeah, just if you know people and you trust them, lend them your cards.
Yeah. I definitely think for me it's a bit hard to wrap my head around just like lending out a like $300 card to somebody, but I suppose there's, you don't want to be the person that damages somebody else's $300 card. So
a common thing you can do is, you could do collateral. They could leave you, if you're worried about it, they can leave you an amount of magic cards to equal the same amount. In case something happens, then that would be yours to keep. I know it's not perfect, but that is something somebody could do if they're worried about it.
Gotcha. And Nushio, how do you deal with that?
I guess I was born lucky. My play group, and I do mean both friends and the tournaments, don't have dual lands or anything like that super, super expensive. So even though there might be 1 or 2 players that do have them in their decks, maybe 3, but they're not, the decks are not at a pace where you can't match it up with a budget deck, which is the great news, right? We do have, most of us do have like fetch lands and shock lands and whatnot, but not near the $300 cards for a full deck.
Yeah, and
As for handling proxies and stuff, we don't. Well, in our casual group, we obviously wouldn't say no. to proxies and whatever, but the store does not allow it as a general policy because of the Wizards Partner Network and all of that.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, I'm actually going to be making a video, which I've been admittedly working on for like 5 or 6 months, but a video on one of my decks and kind of giving like a show of, okay, well, what's the budget version of this deck if you don't have dual lands, and then what if you replace most of the cards with cheaper alternatives, and seeing like kind of the side by side comparison of those price points. And yeah, obviously fetches and duels are kind of expensive, but nowhere near as expensive as true duels. So, yeah. And Omniscience, how do you guys deal with the expensiveness problem?
I think for our gaming community, most of the people don't have, the OG duels. Stocks are pretty limited. Some of them have them in their commander decks, which they'll take out for when they need to build or use a tiny leader. It's not. We're definitely not a super high competitive. We're a very casual store. Like everyone that comes is really easygoing, really laid back. There's usually not anything really powerful or expensive flying around. So kind of nice that way. When it comes to the Tiny Leader tournament that we hold every year for the store anniversary, even then, like we'll get the probably top 10, top 15 people who usually play with those kinds of cards, but like the other 30 to 40 are just happy just being a part of the event and just playing with whatever they have. And generally, I can't say I've ever heard of any hurt feelings when we're just messing around at the store. Like for Tiny Leader, no one really cares about proxies because it's not an official tournament. There's no official rulings or anything like that, right? We're all just playing casually anyways. So no one really cares about proxies. If you use them, you use them. You don't, you don't. Everyone's pretty easygoing that way, I'd have to say. So generally, we don't have to combat the expensive nature too much. We're kind of lucky that way.
Interesting. All right, so what are you guys' thoughts on each other's thoughts, especially regarding this?
So my thoughts are in general, I feel Tiny is half the cost of Commander because it's half the number of cards. So if your play group is doing super expensive Commander, you would feel like a fish at home at Tiny Leaders, I guess.
Okay, so like theoretically, yeah, if you have half the deck, it technically costs half. I think that
Yeah.
I'm not 100% sure if that necessarily tracks with like the dual lands conversation, because if you turn a like commander deck into a tiny leaders deck, you're probably going to keep a similar land base. So I don't know how much that'll actually shave off the price, but it is definitely true that tiny leaders decks are going to be probably cheaper than CEDH decks, for example.
I like I mentioned, I turned my Titus deck into a commander deck, and I just saw the Moxfield number go up and up and up, and I probably almost tripled it just by making it a commander deck.
That's very interesting. And so, from what I'm hearing, we have two people that don't use proxies. One person that uses proxies. And then of the two people, one of them, there is a use of dual lands, but there's a loaning system, so it doesn't actually cause that much of an issue. And then in the other one, not many people have access to dual lands, so it's not a problem anyway. Is that correct?
I would say so, yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, that's some like takeaways. So like obviously this this video's framed a little bit on like hey, if you listening to this want to um play to create a paper community, here's some things that other people have learned. Um and so yeah, we have three different paper communities and three different ways of dealing with that expensiveness problem, all of which from what I hear ends up working out a-okay. Um and so there's a lot of different ways you can deal with that potential point of friction. Now I am kind of curious. So for Laglaunt and Nushio, because you're playing with stores that are part of the Wizards partner program, um, I didn't know that that would cause friction with proxies in non-Wizard sanctioned events.
Yeah, so I guess there's a technicality with Wizards where if you use their program, you're not supposed to allow proxies because Wizards prints the cards. They expect you to play with their cards when you play their events. I mean, yes, some stores will just run the event through the companion app or whatever it is on the store. So I think it's still companion, but and just do it that way. But it was kind of a better safe than sorry sort of approach. So he just didn't want to go against what he was allowed to do. So that's why we don't allow proxies, is so that he could use the companion app within its official capacity and not get in trouble whatsoever. But I mean, like, who's gonna tell Wizards that this mom and pop shop in the middle of nowhere is using the program? Because I mean, everybody has access to companion, and you can run a cube draft or something through companion casually. It just doesn't report it to Wizards of the Coast. I mean, they don't even have they used to have planeswalker points for people, but they don't even do that anymore. So I don't fully see why it matters or not. I do know that, like, proxies as the term is for when, like, let's say you're playing in the tournament and your card gets damaged, or the card is not it's like, oh, this card was painted on, it's too thick, then the head judge might issue you a proxy, which is, it's a basic land that might be wrote on to say the name of the other card because it represents that card, but it's only for that one event. It's not like if it's a fake card meant to look like a card, then it's a counterfeit. But proxies are generally replacements for the tournament because of there being issues with the cards during the tournament.
Sure. And Nushio, what's your experience with that?
My experience is that, well, as a casual player, one of our friends started printing out proxies at home. And he gifted us some basic lands with, like, full art that was like foil and stuff. I actually did put one of the lands in. It's a basic land, so I don't really care if it's a proxy or not. And you can't tell the difference once it's sleeve anyway. In general, the reason why the store doesn't allow proxies is, I feel, to promote consumption of the product. If you start allowing people to use counterfeit or wait, proxies in general are just like, well, there's two kinds, right? There's the ones that are meant to look like the real cards, and the ones that have different art. For instance, a theme. If you want to build a tiny leaders deck themed around Kratos, the God of War, there's only a handful of Kratos cards. But if you wanted to fully theme it, you could maybe print out lands or other spells with art from the games. Um, we don't do that with my play group. We normally just stick to just normal cards.
Gotcha. And Omniscience, you are like the proxy person of this group, apparently. What's like been your experience with that? Have you gotten any flack for that? Um, yeah.
Yeah, we are a WPN store, and we make it very clear when we're running like actual sanctioned events, or we're actually going to be doing like FNMs during any sort of wizard, I guess, wizard hosted event that we're merely managing for them, or at least that's the contract that we have to kind of abide by. No proxies during those events because that's just Wizards rules. But otherwise, as long as it's just for fun, it's just casual. There's no reporting being done to Wizards. Generally, when there's prizes involved, especially if they're Wizards promo prizes, proxies aren't allowed to be used for those kinds of events. So we try to make sure that all the players that come are very informed on when they're, I guess, allowed and when they're not. But when it comes to just hanging out with your friends out at the shop and playing, yeah, proxies, generally, in my experience, have never really been a problem, at least in our area. So I guess it really depends on who you're playing with, where you're playing, what the rules are. I think no matter where you are, you should always observe the store's rules. You don't want to make anybody uncomfortable or get anyone upset, especially in the kind of communities that we're trying to build, for sure.
Yeah. So, yeah, from what I'm hearing, like, yeah, proxy or not, WPN or not, there's ways to deal with the expensiveness issue of the format. And I'm very interested to hear from the other crew. So, for a bit of context, I basically sent out to the Discord server, like, hey, I'm interested in having a Tiny Talks episode about, um, how paper communities are formed and work and so on, because people have been interested in that. And so I reached out to a bunch of people, and I assumed that, only 3 or 4 people would actually respond and say, like, yeah, I'd love to be on an episode. But instead, there was 6 people that wanted to join in. And so we're going to be doing 2 episodes with this same theme. So this is going to be part 1. And so there's going to be a new crew of 3 other people next month. And so it'll be interesting to see how those folks deal with it. Now, one of them, Exilius, is from the same store as Nushio, but I'm sure they'll have still very different perspectives on things.
He's the one that got me here, so I'm actually very interested in hearing his side.
Yeah. So, with that, do we have further thoughts on this particular question?
I guess some of my closing thoughts are go to where the players are. In my case, people play casually at home, such as that last weekend when I went to a friend's house and they were doing Commander. Go where the players are. Talk to them about tiny leaders. Bring a couple of decks to offer to play with them. If you have decks for the full table, I'm sure they would be happy to do a round or 2, and maybe next time even build your own decks. That's most of my closing thoughts. Push the format if you really like it at least as much as I do, right?
Yeah, be kind, be persistent, and just bring decks to let people try the format out. I agree with everything that Nushio said.
Yeah, and that's a perfect segue into our last question, which is like, yeah, what is some advice for other people interested in starting up their own paper communities? Nushio, you kind of already answered the question, but Laglaunt.
Yeah, just go out, leave your house, touch grass, and then go to the store where you can't touch grass. But and just get to know everyone. Get to know people in your shop and get to know the staff, and that's relationships are how you'll open doors and get more people to try things. So because people gotta know you to want to care about what you're saying to them. So just get out there and get to know your local community. I know that sometimes it's anxiety to go out and hang out with people or go to the local shop for some people, but everyone there is awkward. We're all a bunch of nerds, and we all ultimately like playing Magic. So if you want tiny leaders to be a thing in your area, you'll have to go out there and you'll have to try to get people to play.
Yeah. And Nushio, do you have anything further beyond what you said?
I guess in Mexico, WhatsApp is like the number one communication tool. It's what we use to, when you're hunting for cards, you go into many different stores, WhatsApp groups or Facebook groups, and see if someone has singles, or that's where you find out where events for the store, such as Friday Night Magic or Commander events and so on. And that's where you can also meet other people, right? Without leaving your home, you can start talking about Commander, Tiny, and other formats, and maybe start organizing a Tiny night at your local store.
Yeah. And Omniscience, what's your thoughts on this?
Yeah, for starting up a paper tiny leader community, start small. First of all, don't try and bite off more than you can chew. Start talking to a few people at first. Carry some extra decks with you. Like I said before, find out who the people that everyone flock to are always asking questions of. Try and meet up with those people and get them on board with you, right? Like if most of the people are copying what those people are doing, you just gotta sway one or two people, and then it'll eventually catch. So yeah, really meet people, get out there, talk about it. The more passionate you are about it, the more it's going to kind of come to life for you. And don't be afraid to fail, right? Like, just because you don't get one or two people, don't let it stop you. I think if it's something that you really want to achieve, sometimes you're going to fall off the bike, but you just got to get back on and try again. So don't let it get to you, because then you might not see it happen. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think from what I've been hearing, the biggest takeaways are the 5 points for success. You have bribery, so having any sort of prize on the line will get people to want to play some more. There is peer pressure, so if your friends are playing it, or if you get friends to play it, then getting more folks isn't that difficult. Then propaganda, some pro tiny leaders talk always helps. Nagging about it, so just like constantly talking about it and trying to work with folks. There was one last point that I don't quite remember. I don't know. I said it previously in the video, so I'll just like flash it up on screen or something like that. But yeah. And do you guys have any other like closing thoughts, or do we think this is like a good spot to end things out?
My closing thought are thank you for helping push this format forwards. I really enjoyed it. It's been my favorite format so far. And Tiny is like the number one thing I play. And I wish I could even play more or with more people.
Yeah, and honestly, thank you guys more for like promoting the format. I think one of the best ways for this format to grow is from the paper community side, because sure, we can like advertise it and get people to, join the Discord and play online, but until we start getting people organizing events and having tournaments and creating a paper community, it I don't think a format can truly take off without those things. All right. Well, I think that has been our episode so far. And as always, stay tiny. And if you want to, learn more and get more perspectives on how to create a paper format, um, there's going to be a part 2 to this. So paper communities are cool, and it's very interesting for me to learn about the many different perspectives from many different locations. And yeah, stay tiny.